In vain, now seeing the splendid sacrifice, a prodigal of a rich divinity, her rich divinity, well, she is what? Herself and all she was, she had lent to men, hoping her greater being to implant that heaven might native grow on mortal soil. She had come for that purpose to lend, that is to prepare again. Hard is it, but well, this is what she has come to prepare. But what are the conditions here? Hard is it to persuade earth nature's change. The stubbornness of the inconscient nature is such that it will not easily change. It will stick on to its own habits. Death is a habit, and death will not give up its habit. It is hard to pursue it. It has to be then worked out in a different manner. Hard is it to persuade earth nature's change. Mortality bears ill the eternal touch. Yes, the eternal touch wants to come and do things, but help him. It fears the pure divine intolerance. It fears that mortality fears the divine intolerance. Is impatient to impose itself upon this one, but it fears that of that assault of ether and of fire, of that assault of ether and of fire, of that assault of ether and of fire. It wants to come, they impose upon that thing. Put a line of that assault of ether and of fire. It murmurs at its sorrowless happening, almost with its naked power of truth, and the mightiest witness of his absolute voice. It murmurs, mortality murmurs at the absoluteness of his voice, you see. This is the exact description of the condition of the earth in general. The grace comes, we reject it. We don't pay even attention to it. If we pay attention, we reject it. We don't allow it to work also. Only little by little, the number of people who are accepting this truth increases. So it is a very, very small, little, gradual process. That is why the divine knows that with patience, repeating this effort, one day it will bring its result. So the divine is not impatient. It keeps on quietly, silently working on it. In fact, it is by many repeated attempts and apparent failures that the work is done. Yes, through ages and ages, this has been happening, going on further. In fact, it is by many repeated attempts and apparent failures that the work is done. And it is the symbolic representation of this effort that is given in Savitri, in the epic Savitri serial. It is a symbolic work, not the telling of a story or something that happened. It is not a narrative, it is not a fiction, it is not a story. It is really a kind of a symbolic representation of the whole process, how it has been going on, little by little, how the work is being done by the divine. See. Image from effort, divine, it is the illustration in a condensed and image form of this effort of the divine to divinize, effort of the divine to divinize, gradually, step by step, slowly, the material creation. The whole thing has to happen in the material world. Actions that in appearance may seem failures as steps are definite steps. Mother is very hopeful, very optimistic. They have a part to play here. Towards realization, this is one of the things that have been expressed and represented in Savitri. Infitting on the height the abysm's law, on the height the abysm's law, infitting on the height. This is what we do. We throw back our habits, our mal notions, etc. on them. It sullies with his Maya, heaven's messengers. She comes here, we throw our ugliness on the messenger itself. All these things. Its thorns of fallen nature are the defense. It turns against the Savior hands of grave. It made the sons of God with death and pain. So that is the crucifixion scene he has described here directly. See, Christ how he came and what he was offered, jeers and insults and beating, and put on his head the thorn, crown of thorns. That is what we do on the messenger who comes here. A glory of lightning traversing the earth's scene. There some thoughts fading, darkened by ignorant mind. Their work betrayed, their good to evil turn. They crossed their payment for the crown they gave. Only they leave behind a splendid name. Well, this is what happened. Christ goes away, what remains behind is only Christianity. That is the pity. That is the pity, you see. That is the history of human life upon earth. It happens again and again. You see. Each time that help has been sent to hasten this evolution, it has been received in that way. But each time the effort and the help are bigger, higher, truer. Each avatar he comes, he gives some help, the next avatar adds to it much bigger, higher. Each time a little work, some result is achieved, and step by step the world grows towards realization. That is the slow process. Well, in a certain sense, step by step is important because it is only following step by step the whole sequence. Every detail is attended. You don't leave anything behind unattended. Otherwise, again, it will spring up and come as an obstacle. So, step by step, every detail has to be conquered and taken forward. So, step by step is required. The whole story has been shown under a symbolic form, in a symbolic story, and it is that Sri Aurobindo gives in Savitri. That is why he calls it a symbol, a legend and a symbol. Legend because it is a story which is told from time to time traditionally, but basically it is a symbol. Basically, but the legend is also a very powerful story. It is by itself that legend is already symbolic. That legend itself is symbolic. The fire has come and touched men's hearts and gone. It comes and goes away. A fire has come and touched men's hearts and gone. A few have caught flame and risen to greater life. Well, this is what happened. A fire has come and touched men's hearts and gone. A few have caught flame and risen to greater life. In the hour of God, those who are ready, they cleanse the soul and make progress. Then the hour of God comes, the question asked to you, are you ready to profit from that? If you are ready, then a few have come and touched and gone. To unlight the world she came to help and save. Obviously, our world is not really like the world from which she has come. Her greatness weighed upon its ignorant brain, and from its dim chasm welled a dire return, a portion of his sorrow, struggle, fall. To live with grief, to confront death on her road, the mortal's lot became the immortal's share. What is the immortal's lot? Death. That has become now the share of the immortal. Savitri is now again described here as the immortal. She was described in many ways earlier, the daughter of infinity, one who has come from there. Now she is here as the immortal. To live with grief, unless she lives with grief, incapacity, inadequacy, all those things he has described, unless she participates in them, how can she really help? The immortal's lot became the immortal's share. She must participate here. Thus trapped in the gin of earthly destiny, awaiting her ordeal's hour, abode, outcast from her inborn felicity, accepting life's obscure terrestrial robe, she has put on herself, hiding herself even from those she loved, a godhead greater by a human fate. That is the beauty of Savitri. Hiding herself even from those she loved. Savitri has chosen Satyavan as her husband. She goes and starts living the hermitage. In the hermitage, there are rishis, there are people around. Savitri's parents-in-law are there, her husband is there. But nobody, none of those rishis, those great sages know who this Savitri is. None of them know that. From them whom she loved them, but they don't know who she is. Savitri. Satyavan has the least idea that she is a divine goddess who has come here, and she is now preparing herself for the great event which is likely to occur 1 year after the marriage. He has no idea that he is going to die. Only Savitri knows. Savitri alone in the entire forest, in the whole hermitage, she alone knows that the day of Satyavan's death is fixed. And she has not told that thing to anybody, hiding herself even from them whom she loved. You see, such great capacity to hold back that knowledge, that is extraordinarily yogic, something tremendous, to hold back that knowledge, you see. A godhead greater by human fate. So she has really become a greater goddess. See, Savitri up there, she knows everything. But when she comes and hosts it here, she has kind of got another promotion. She has become greater than the Godhead from whom she has come here. By the fall into human race, if you are able to rise, you go beyond what you are as a Godhead. A Godhead greater by human fate. This is to make humanity understand that a greater purity, a greater force, a greater knowledge, and greater ananda can be acquired through struggle and pain. Through struggle and pain, greater all that pain. Suffering and difficulty more than through an easy and smooth life. So mother is recommending mother is recommending us for all these things, suffering and pain and difficulty, you see. It is not the cause of difficulties, it is the result. This suffering, etc., is not the cause of difficulty, it is the result of that, you see. That is to say, it would be a mistake to believe that these difficulties have been created in order to bring this marvelous result. The difficulties have not been created, they have appeared as a part of the process, they have appeared, they have not been created. God has not planted those difficulties in our path, you see, have been created in order to bring them. It is not so, but according to the action of the grace, the difficulties having occurred, the grace can change them into means of greater progress. Now, if you are really striving for ananda, for greater light, for greater power and all that thing, what is required is, yes, difficulties are there, but the help is there. Are you ready to receive the help? Are you ready to open yourself to the grace? If you are able to open yourself, the difficulties vanish. Until then, it's for you at all. Grace is there, waiting for you to open out. You have to open out yourself. Grace can change them into means of greater progress. That is the attitude to be taken towards it as it is. It will allow the grace to give its maximum of help. If you are cooperating that way, then it will allow you to, with the help, maximum result. That is why we can always say, from the worst, the best will arise. But that does not mean that we strive, we start preparing worst. We don't invite worst. It is a part of the whole process. If it's there, but the grace is there, it will take care of it. Not that we must purposefully bring or attract the worst, obviously. But when we are faced by it, we must keep this fact and go on without hesitation, without fear, never losing an absolute quiet and sure faith. Now that grace will work under these conditions. What is required of you as a preparation is absolute quiet and sure faith. Yes, grace will do. Shraddha, Shanti, these are the things which you have to have. Then only the grace can come and work in you, not until then.